I am Claire, 35 years old. My father's words still echo in my mind. Get out and never return empty-handed. He screamed this at me in front of everyone at my graduation party. The tears I held back that day fueled my determination. Little did he know that one day I would own a $100 million hospital. If you are watching this, let me know where you are from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I turned my pain into power. Growing up in a middle-class suburb of Boston, my childhood was anything but normal. My father, Thomas, owned a chain of small pharmacies that he had built from nothing. He was proud of his achievement and expected nothing less than perfection from his children. My mother, Elaine, was a meek woman who never stood up to him, always nodding and agreeing with whatever he said. "Claire, what is this?" Thomas would ask, holding up my report card with a red circle around the A in chemistry. "Do you think this is acceptable in this house?" Every Sunday evening, we had what my father called performance reviews. He would sit at the head of the dining table reviewing our grades, extracurricular activities, and even our chores. My brother Jack always seemed to pass these reviews with flying colors. Me? I was never good enough. "Your brother is top of his class. Why can't you be more like him?" The comparison was constant and crushing. I remember when I was 16, I got an A on my final exam. Most parents would have been thrilled, but not Thomas. As punishment, he banned me from attending the summer festival that I had been looking forward to all year. "If you spent less time daydreaming and more time studying, you would have gotten a perfect score," he said coldly. "Actions have consequences, Claire." The worst part was that I truly loved learning. Science fascinated me. The human body, with all its complexities and mysteries, was like a puzzle I wanted to solve. I dreamed of becoming a doctor, helping people, making a difference. Medicine. "Don't be ridiculous," my father scoffed when I shared my dream. "You will take over the family business. The pharmacies need someone with a head for business, not some bleeding heart who wants to play doctor." My only refuge was my friendship with Sophia. We met in middle school and instantly connected. While my home was cold and demanding, her house was warm and accepting. Her parents encouraged creativity and independent thinking. "You would make an amazing doctor, Claire," Sophia would tell me when we studied together in her bedroom. "Don't let your dad crush your dreams." But it was hard not to. Thomas controlled every aspect of my life. I wasn't allowed to join clubs or sports teams because they would distract from academics. After school and on weekends, I worked at one of his pharmacies, learning the business I had no interest in pursuing. "This will be yours someday," he would say, gesturing around the store. "You need to know it inside and out." The loneliness was sometimes unbearable. While other teenagers went to parties and football games, I was either studying or working. My father's love seemed conditional, based entirely on achievement rather than who I was as a person. "We don't have room for mediocrity in this family," was one of his favorite sayings. My mother would occasionally try to soften his harsh words, but never in his presence. "Your father just wants what's best for you," she would whisper when we were alone. "He had it tough growing up. He doesn't know any other way to show love." But it didn't feel like love. It felt like a prison one where the bars were made of expectations so high that I could never climb over them. Jack, 3 years older than me, had already accepted his role in the family. He was studying business administration and working part-time as a manager at one of the pharmacies. He rarely stood up for me, too afraid of losing our father's approval. "Just do what he says, Claire," Jack advised me once. "It's easier that way." But I couldn't silence the voice inside me that whispered there was more to life than living up to Thomas's expectations. I kept my dreams alive in secret, researching medical schools late at night, saving what little money I earned from the pharmacy in a hidden account, and maintaining perfect grades despite my father's insistence that they were never good enough. Every night before sleep, I would imagine myself in a white coat, helping patients, making diagnoses, changing lives. This dream sustained me through the coldness of my home, through the constant criticism, through the isolation. And then came senior year of high school, when everything began to change. Despite my father's control, I had managed to excel academically. My SAT scores were nearly perfect, my GPA was at the top of my class, and my science teachers wrote glowing recommendation letters. Without telling my parents, I applied to several prestigious universities with strong pre-med programs. When the acceptance letters started arriving, I hid them in the back of my closet, knowing the storm that would come when I finally revealed my plans. The breaking point came at dinner one evening in April. Thomas was discussing my future, laying out his plan for me to attend the local state university for business administration while continuing to work at the pharmacy. "I've spoken with the admissions counselor," he said between bites of pot roast. "They're expecting your enrollment confirmation by next week." Something inside me snapped. Years of suppressed desires and dreams came rushing to the surface. "I'm not going there," I said quietly but firmly. The table went silent. My mother froze with her fork midway to her mouth. Jack stared down at his plate. "What did you say?" Thomas asked, his voice dangerously low. I took a deep breath, knowing there was no turning back. "I've been accepted to Johns Hopkins on a full scholarship. I'm going to study medicine, not business." The explosion that followed was nuclear. Thomas slammed his fist on the table, making the dishes jump. "You ungrateful child. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me, by throwing away your inheritance, by rejecting your family legacy." But for once, I stood my ground. "It's my life, Dad, not yours." That night I cried myself to sleep, but they were tears of both fear and relief. I had finally spoken my truth, and despite the consequences that would surely come, I felt free for the first time in my life. The day I left for college was both terrifying and exhilarating. My father had barely spoken to me since our confrontation, communicating only through curt businesslike statements about practical matters. He refused to drive me to the airport, so my mother secretly arranged for a taxi. "I'm proud of you," she whispered as she hugged me goodbye, slipping an envelope into my hand. Inside was $500 in cash. "Call me when you can." Johns Hopkins University was everything I had dreamed of, and more. The campus buzzed with intellectual energy, the professors were passionate about teaching, and for the first time I was surrounded by people who shared my love of science and medicine. My dorm room was tiny, but it was mine. No performance reviews, no comparisons to Jack, no crushing expectations, just the freedom to pursue my passion. "You must be Claire," said a cheerful voice on my first day. A young woman with curly hair and bright eyes extended her hand. "I'm your resident advisor, Zoe. Welcome to Hopkins." The orientation week was a whirlwind of new faces, campus tours, and information sessions. I felt like I could finally breathe, like I was exactly where I belonged. My pre-med courses were challenging but fascinating. Anatomy, physiology, organic chemistry, each offered a new piece of the puzzle of human health that I was so eager to solve. I threw myself into my studies, determined to prove that I had made the right choice. "You're setting the curve in Professor Wilson's class," my lab partner Taylor complained good-naturedly. "Some of us mere mortals would appreciate if you could dial it back a notch." But I couldn't. Every A, every commendation from a professor, every small success felt like vindication. It was in my advanced biology class that I met Marcus. Tall, with thoughtful brown eyes and a quiet confidence, he was the only student whose grades rivaled mine. What started as a competitive academic relationship soon blossomed into friendship as we were paired for a semester-long research project. "You're different from the other pre-med students," Marcus told me one evening as we worked late in the lab. "Most of them are just chasing prestige or money. You genuinely care about the science." For the first time, I felt truly seen and appreciated for who I was, not who someone else wanted me to be. My phone calls with my mother became a lifeline to home, though I carefully edited what I shared, knowing she might repeat it to my father. "Your father asks about your grades," she would say tentatively. "They're good, Mom. Really good." "That's wonderful, dear. He'll be pleased to hear that." But I knew nothing I achieved would truly please Thomas unless it aligned with his vision for my life. As the months passed, my friendship with Marcus deepened. We spent hours studying together, challenging each other, and sharing our dreams for the future. He wanted to specialize in pediatric oncology, inspired by a younger sister who had survived childhood leukemia. Medicine gave my family a second chance, he explained. I want to do that for other families. By the end of our sophomore year, our relationship had evolved into something more. Our first kiss happened after finals, both of us giddy with relief, and the freedom of summer stretching before us. I've never met anyone like you, Claire. Marcus whispered, his forehead pressed against mine. You make me want to be a better doctor, a better person. For the first time, I experienced what it felt like to be loved for exactly who I was. It was intoxicating. The summer after sophomore year, I stayed on campus working as a research assistant in a neuroscience lab. The distance from home gave me space to grow, to discover who Claire was outside of Thomas's daughter. When junior year began, Marcus and I were inseparable. We took the same classes, studied for the MCAT together, and began making plans for applying to medical schools. We could try for the same programs, Marcus suggested as we lay on the grass quad, watching clouds drift overhead. Build our careers together. The future I had always dreamed of seemed within reach. I was excelling academically, had found true love, and was on track to become the doctor I had always wanted to be. But then came the letter from my father. Cold and businesslike, it informed me that he would no longer provide any financial support, no matter how minimal it had been. The scholarship covered my tuition, but I had relied on small supplements from home for books and living expenses. If you insist on this foolish path, you will do so entirely on your own, the letter concluded. I took on more work hours, juggling 3 part-time jobs while maintaining my course load. Marcus helped where he could, sharing his textbooks, and often making extra food to ensure I ate properly. You're the strongest person I know, he would say when I was on the verge of collapse from exhaustion. But you don't have to do everything alone anymore. You have me now. The Thanksgiving break of junior year, I reluctantly returned home, hoping that time had softened my father's stance. The house felt smaller than I remembered, constrained by unspoken tensions and old patterns. Dinner was a stilted affair until my father cleared his throat and made an announcement that sent ice through my veins. I've been speaking with Howard Blackwell, he said, referring to his business partner. His son Ryan has just finished his MBA. We think a merger of our businesses through marriage would be advantageous for all parties involved. I nearly choked on my mashed potatoes. Marriage? Are you joking? This is not a joke, Claire. It's a practical solution. You've wasted enough time with this medical school nonsense. It's time to come home and take your rightful place in the family business. The argument that followed was explosive. Words were said that could never be taken back. I accused him of trying to sell me like property. He accused me of betraying the family legacy. You will never succeed without my support, he shouted as I stormed out of the house with my hastily packed bag. You think you can make it as a doctor? You'll come crawling back when reality hits you. I didn't look back as I walked to the bus station, tears streaming down my face but resolve hardening in my heart. I would prove him wrong. I had to. The sun streamed through the windows of the auditorium as I sat among my fellow graduates. The blue gown and cap, a symbol of everything I had worked for. 4 years of relentless study, countless sleepless nights, and a determination that had been forged in the fires of my father's disapproval had led to this moment. My name was near the top of the program, followed by the words, summa cum laude, the highest honor. I had not only survived medical school, against all odds I had thrived. I'm so proud of you, Marcus whispered, squeezing my hand. He looked handsome in his own graduation robes, his future as bright as mine. We had both been accepted into prestigious residency programs at Washington Memorial Hospital. More than that, the night before, under a canopy of stars on the campus quad, where we had spent so many hours studying, Marcus had asked me to marry him. We'll build our lives together, he had promised, sliding a modest but beautiful ring onto my finger. Our careers, our home, our family, everything. I had said yes without hesitation, tears of joy streaming down my face. After all the rejection and conditional love I had experienced growing up, Marcus's unwavering support and belief in me felt like a miracle. For our combined graduation and engagement celebration, I had taken the bold step of inviting my family. Part of me hoped that my achievements would finally earn my father's respect, that he would see that my path, though different from what he had planned, was valid and worthy. Sophia, who had remained my steadfast friend through college and medical school, had helped me arrange a small reception at a local restaurant. "Just keep it civil for a few hours," she advised as we set up decorations. "This is your day to shine." The ceremony itself was moving. As I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, I searched the audience for familiar faces. My mother was there dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, and to my surprise, so was my father sitting stiffly next to her, his expression unreadable. Even more surprising was the presence of my brother Jack, who had hardly communicated with me since our falling out. Next to him sat an older man I recognized as Howard Blackwell, my father's business partner, and a younger man who must be Ryan, the son I was supposed to have married in my father's grand plan. After the ceremony, we gathered at the restaurant. The atmosphere was tense but polite as introductions were made and congratulations offered. My mother hugged me tightly, whispering how proud she was. Jack gave me a stiff nod but seemed uncomfortable. My father, however, remained cold, barely acknowledging Marcus or my achievement. He spent most of the time in deep conversation with Howard and Ryan, occasionally glancing my way with disappointment. As champagne was poured and toasts began, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this gathering could be a turning point, a chance to build bridges between my past and my future. Sophia stood up first, raising her glass. "To Claire and Marcus, two of the most brilliant and compassionate people I know. The medical world is lucky to have you both." Marcus's parents followed with warm words about welcoming me into their family. Even Jack managed a brief toast, awkwardly acknowledging my persistence. Then my father rose, glass in hand, and the room fell silent. I have watched Claire make choices that I did not agree with. He began, his voice tight. Choices that went against everything I had planned for her. I held my breath, hoping against hope for some acknowledgement, some indication that he had come to accept my path. And today I see not achievement but rebellion, not success but defiance. The room grew uncomfortably quiet. Marcus's hand tightened around mine. A real success would be building something, not playing doctor with other people's money. A real achievement would be honoring family obligations. His voice rose as he continued gesturing towards Ryan. "You could have had a place in a real business, a real future. Instead, you chase childish dreams and think a piece of paper makes you special." He pointed directly at me, his face contorted with anger. "Get out and never return empty-handed. You are no daughter of mine until you prove your worth with something real." The room gasped collectively. My mother began to cry. Marcus stood up ready to defend me, but I placed a hand on his arm to stop him. Rising slowly, I looked my father directly in the eyes. "Thank you for making your feelings clear." I said, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the storm of emotions inside me. "I won't bother you again." With as much dignity as I could muster, I walked out of the restaurant. Marcus close behind me. Outside, the tears I had been holding back finally spilled over. "I'm so sorry, Claire," Marcus said, holding me close. "He had no right to speak to you that way." "It's okay," I managed between sobs. I knew deep down he would never approve. At least now I can stop hoping for something that will never happen. But it wasn't okay. The public humiliation, the rejection, the cruel words, in what should have been one of the happiest moments of my life, all cut deeper than I could admit. Despite everything I had achieved, a part of me still longed for my father's approval, and that part was now shattered beyond repair. Marcus took me back to his apartment, where Sophia and a few close friends joined us later, creating an impromptu celebration that was filled with genuine warmth and support. They rallied around me, reminding me of how far I had come, of all I had to be proud of. "You don't need his approval," Sophia insisted, hugging me fiercely. "You never did." As the night wore on and our friends gradually left, Marcus and I sat on his small balcony, looking out at the city lights. "We start our residencies next month," he said, a note of excitement in his voice. "Our real lives are just beginning, Claire. Together." I leaned my head on his shoulder, trying to focus on the future rather than the pain of the past. "Together," I echoed, holding on to that promise like a lifeline. What I didn't know then was that the worst betrayal was yet to come from the person I trusted most. 3 days later, Marcus received a call from the prestigious International Medical Center in Switzerland, offering him a spot in their exclusive residency program. It was an opportunity that any new doctor would dream of, a fast track to the highest levels of the medical profession. "I don't understand," I said when he told me the news. "You didn't apply there." Marcus couldn't meet my eyes. "Actually, I did. Months ago. I just never thought I'd get in." Something about his evasiveness triggered an alarm in my mind. "When exactly did you apply, and why didn't you tell me?" After much pressing, the truth emerged in pieces. Marcus had met with my father secretly shortly after our engagement. Thomas had connections at the International Medical Center through pharmaceutical business dealings. "He said he respected my ambition," Marcus admitted, looking ashamed. "He offered to use his influence to get me into the program if I reconsidered my relationship with you." The floor seemed to drop from beneath me. "And you agreed?" "No, not at first," Marcus protested. "But then he showed me the research opportunities, the career advancement. Claire, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." I felt numb as the implications became clear. "So you're taking it? You're leaving?" Marcus reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "We could try long distance. I'll only be gone for 2 years." But I knew it was over. The betrayal was too deep, the parallel to my father's conditional love too painful. Marcus had chosen career advancement over our relationship, just as my father had chosen his business over his daughter's happiness. "Get out," I whispered, echoing my father's words, but with a quiet dignity rather than rage. "Please just go." After Marcus left, I sat alone in stunned silence. In the space of a week, I had lost my family and the man I thought I would spend my life with. The future I had carefully planned lay in ruins around me. What I didn't realize then was that sometimes the greatest destruction clears the way for rebuilding something even stronger. The months following graduation were the darkest of my life. I moved into a tiny studio apartment that I could barely afford on my residence salary. The walls were thin, the plumbing unreliable, and the neighborhood questionable, but it was all I could manage while trying to keep my head above water financially. Washington Memorial Hospital, where I had begun my residency in internal medicine, was known for its demanding program. 18-hour shifts were common, and the senior doctors seemed to take a perverse pleasure in testing the limits of their residents. "Edwards present on the patient in room 304. Dr. Mercer would bark, giving me seconds to recall complex details from the dozens of cases I was managing. Under normal circumstances, the stress would have been challenging, but manageable. In my emotional state, it was nearly unbearable. I lost weight, developed insomnia, and found myself crying in supply closets during brief breaks. The other residents noticed my decline, but were too consumed with their own survival to offer much support. We were all drowning, just at different rates. "You look like hell, Edwards," one of my colleagues commented after I had been on shift for nearly 20 hours straight. "Maybe medicine isn't for you." The comment, casual and thoughtless, hit a nerve exposed by my father's rejection. Maybe he was right. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Maybe I was destined to fail and crawl back home exactly as he had predicted. I began making small mistakes. Nothing dangerous to patients, but enough to draw negative attention from my supervisors. My evaluations, once stellar, became mediocre. The chief resident pulled me aside after a particularly difficult shift. "Is something going on, Edwards? Your performance isn't what we expected based on your academic record." I mumbled something about adjusting to the demands of residency, unwilling to reveal the personal turmoil that was affecting my work. Admitting weakness felt too much like proving my father right. My tiny apartment became both a refuge and a prison. I would return after grueling shifts, collapse onto my futon, and stare at the ceiling, too exhausted to eat, but too anxious to sleep. The engagement ring Marcus had given me sat in a drawer, a painful reminder of dreams derailed. One evening after I had called in sick for the second time that month, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Sophia stood there, concern etched on her face. "You haven't been answering my calls," she said, pushing past me into the apartment. "I had to get your address from the hospital directory." She looked around at the unwashed dishes, the pile of scrubs on the floor, the general disarray that mirrored my mental state. "Oh, Claire," she whispered, pulling me into a hug. That night, as we sat on my futon sharing a pizza, I finally let everything pour out: the humiliation at the graduation party, Marcus's betrayal, my struggles at the hospital. Sophia listened without judgment, occasionally wiping away her own tears. "You need help," she said finally. "Not just emotional support, but professional help. This is depression, Claire. Clinical depression." Part of me wanted to argue, to insist that I could handle everything on my own as I always had. But I was so tired of fighting alone. The next day, Sophia went with me to see a therapist who specialized in working with medical professionals. Dr. Levine was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who listened to my story with sharp attention. "The medical profession breaks people," she said bluntly after I had finished speaking. "Even without the personal trauma you've experienced. We're going to work on building you back up stronger this time." Through weekly therapy sessions and a brief course of antidepressants, I slowly began to emerge from the fog. Dr. Levine helped me understand that my worth wasn't tied to my father's approval or Marcus's love, that I had value simply because I existed. "Your father's rejection says more about him than it does about you," she pointed out. "And Marcus's choice reveals his character, not your worthiness." Gradually, my performance at the hospital improved. I developed coping mechanisms for the stress, learned to set boundaries, and reconnected with the passion for medicine that had driven me from the beginning. It was during a particularly challenging case, a 70-year-old man with puzzling symptoms, that had stumped the diagnostic team, that I caught the attention of Dr. Harrison. A legendary diagnostician nearing retirement, Dr. Harrison rarely took interest in first-year residents. "You suggested sarcoidosis for Mr. Peterson," he said, approaching me in the doctor's lounge one evening. "Unusual thinking for someone at your level. What made you consider it?" I explained my reasoning, the pattern of symptoms and test results that had led me to the diagnosis that ultimately proved correct. Dr. Harrison listened intently, his bushy white eyebrows drawn together in concentration. "Join me for coffee tomorrow," he said when I had finished. 6 a.m. before rounds. The cafe across the street. That coffee meeting was the beginning of an unexpected mentorship. Dr. Harrison, I learned, had built his career not just on diagnostic brilliance, but on a profound belief in treating the whole patient, not just the disease. He saw medicine as both science and art, requiring equal parts knowledge, intuition, and compassion. "Most doctors today are technicians," he told me during one of our regular meetings. "They know the mechanics but miss the meaning. Patients are puzzles to solve, not people to heal. You're different, Claire. You see both." Under his guidance, I began to rebuild my confidence as a physician. He challenged me intellectually, pushed me to think beyond conventional approaches, and most importantly reminded me why I had chosen medicine in the first place: to make a difference in people's lives. One evening, after we had successfully diagnosed a particularly complex case, Dr. Harrison invited me to dinner at his home. It was the first time we had met outside the hospital or nearby cafe. His house was modest but filled with books, artifacts from his travels, and photos of patients he had treated over his long career. Over a simple meal of pasta and salad, he told me about a dream he had harbored for years. "The healthcare system is broken," he said, refilling my wine glass. "It serves insurance companies and hospital administrators, not patients. For years, I've wanted to create something different, a hospital that combines cutting-edge technology with humanistic care that treats patients regardless of their ability to pay." "Why haven't you?" I asked. He smiled sadly. "Money, connections, the courage to start over at my age." But mostly I never found the right partner, someone with both the medical brilliance and the heart to make it work. The conversation shifted to other topics, but his words stayed with me, planting a seed that would later grow into something neither of us could have imagined. As my second year of residency began, Sophia came to me with an unexpected proposition. She had been working in healthcare administration and had made a connection with a venture capitalist named Jordan Reeves, who specialized in medical startups. He's looking for innovative healthcare models to invest in, she explained over brunch. I told him about you and Dr. Harrison. He wants to meet. Me? Why would he want to meet me? Sophia smiled. Because I told him you're going to change medicine as we know it, and I wasn't exaggerating. The meeting with Jordan Reeves was scheduled for the following week at a sleek downtown office. I was nervous, feeling out of place in my best but clearly budget-conscious outfit among the sharp-suited finance professionals. Jordan himself was a surprise middle-aged, but with a youthful energy, casually dressed in jeans and a button-down shirt, more interested in ideas than appearances. Sophia tells me you have a vision for a different kind of hospital, he said, getting straight to the point. I hesitated, caught off guard. Actually, it's Dr. Harrison's vision. I'm just a resident. Tell me anyway. So I did. I shared everything Dr. Harrison had discussed with me, but also added my own ideas incorporating preventive care and community health initiatives, using technology to extend care beyond hospital walls, creating a model that could be replicated in underserved areas. Jordan listened intently, occasionally asking sharp questions that pushed me to elaborate or clarify. By the end of the hour, I was animated, gesturing enthusiastically as I described the potential impact of such a healthcare model. I like you, Dr. Edwards, Jordan said when I finally ran out of steam. You have both vision and practical sense. Rare combination. Let's talk again with Dr. Harrison next time. As I left the meeting, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. Not just for my career, but for the possibility of creating something meaningful, something that embodied everything I believed medicine could be. What I didn't know then was that Dr. Harrison had been diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer just days before. He had kept it secret from everyone at the hospital, continuing to work while quietly putting his affairs in order. When I told him about the meeting with Jordan, his eyes lit up with an enthusiasm I hadn't seen before. "This is it, Claire," he said, reaching for my hand across his desk. "This is why our paths crossed. You're going to build what I never could." 1 week later, he called in sick for the first time in his career. 3 days after that, he was admitted to our own hospital. And 2 weeks later, I stood by his bedside as he made me an extraordinary offer. "I'm making you the executor of my estate," he said, his voice weak but his eyes clear. "Everything I have, my savings, my investments, my property, it's all going to the Harrison Edwards Medical Foundation." I stared at him in shock. Harrison Edwards? But I'm just my partner, he finished for me. The one who will carry this forward. Promise me, Claire. Promise me you'll build it. Through tears, I promised. 3 days later, he was gone. The grief was profound, but so was the responsibility. Dr. Harrison had left me not just his financial assets, which were more substantial than I had imagined, but also his dream. A dream that now had a chance of becoming reality. When I met with Jordan again to discuss the foundation and the potential hospital project, I was no longer just a resident with ideas. I was a woman with a mission, with seed funding, and with a determination born from years of being told I wasn't enough. "I'm in," Jordan said after reviewing the preliminary plans. "But this won't be easy. The healthcare establishment doesn't like disruptors." I thought of my father, of Marcus, of everyone who had underestimated me. "I'm counting on it," I replied. Breaking ground on what would become Hope Memorial Hospital was one of the most terrifying and exhilarating days of my life. Standing in an empty lot in a formerly industrial area of the city, surrounded by contractors, architects, and a small group of supporters, I felt both powerful and completely out of my depth. "Are we really doing this?" I whispered to Sophia, who had left her job to join me as Chief Operations Officer. "We really are," she confirmed, squeezing my hand. "Dr. Harrison would be proud." The initial phase of construction was funded by a combination of Dr. Harrison's estate, which included nearly $12 million in investments and property, and Jordan's venture capital firm, which had committed $20 million to the project. It was a substantial sum, but still well short of what we would need to fully realize our vision. "We'll need to fundraise aggressively," Jordan advised during one of our weekly strategy meetings. "Target wealthy donors with personal connections to healthcare challenges, apply for grants, seek corporate partnerships." This was the part of the project that made me most uncomfortable. My medical training hadn't prepared me for asking people for money or navigating the complex world of healthcare finance. "You're the face of this project, Claire," Jordan insisted. "Your story, your passion, that's what will convince people to invest." So I learned. I took crash courses in public speaking, studied healthcare economics, and practiced my pitch until I could deliver it with conviction and clarity. Jordan introduced me to his network of investors and philanthropists, and slowly our funding began to grow. But for every step forward, there seemed to be 2 steps back. Construction delays, regulatory hurdles, unexpected costs every day brought new challenges that tested my resolve. "The city zoning board is requiring additional environmental impact studies," Sophia reported one morning, frustration evident in her voice. "That's another 3-month delay minimum." More concerning were the rumors that began circulating in the healthcare community that our project was underfunded, poorly planned, and doomed to fail. Potential staff members who had initially expressed interest began to withdraw, concerned about joining a sinking ship. "Someone's actively working against us," Jordan observed after we lost a major potential donor who had suddenly reversed their commitment. "This isn't just bad luck." I was inclined to dismiss his concerns as paranoia until I received an anonymous email containing internal documents from our project documents that had been selectively edited to make our financial situation look far more precarious than it was. Who would do this? I wondered aloud, showing the email to Sophia and Jordan. And why? The answer came in an unexpected form. While attending a healthcare innovation conference to network with potential partners, I overheard a conversation in the hotel bar that made my blood run cold. "Thomas is determined to shut it down before it even opens," a man was saying. "He's convinced it will undercut his pharmacy business if they implement their proposed prescription program." "Well, he and Jack have connections on the zoning board," another voice replied. "And their pharmaceutical partners don't want the competition either. They'll make sure it never gets off the ground." I didn't need to see the speakers to know they were talking about my father and brother. Somehow they had learned about my involvement in the hospital project and were actively working to sabotage it. The realization was both infuriating and oddly validating. I was building something significant enough to threaten their business interests. I was no longer the disappointing daughter they could dismiss. My work was now worth actively fighting against. But knowledge of their interference didn't make our challenges any less real. 6 months into construction, we faced a serious financial crisis. Cost overruns, delays, and the need to secure top medical talent with competitive salaries had stretched our budget to the breaking point. "We have 2 options," Jordan explained during an emergency meeting with our core team. "Scale back dramatically, or find a major new investor within the next 30 days. Scaling back would mean compromising on everything that made our hospital concept special: the cutting-edge technology, the community outreach programs, the sliding scale payment model. It would mean becoming just another hospital, not the revolution in care we had envisioned." "Give me the 30 days, I said firmly. "I'll find the money." What followed was the most intense month of my life. I slept in my office more often than my apartment, made dozens of pitches to potential investors, and pursued every possible funding lead, all while continuing to oversee the clinical planning aspects of the hospital. One evening, as I was preparing yet another presentation, my assistant rushed into my office. "Dr. Edwards, there's an emergency at the construction site. They've found structural issues that could compromise the entire East Wing. The estimated cost to address the problems, $8 million, we didn't have." That night I sat alone in my office, facing what seemed like insurmountable odds. For the first time since starting this journey, I considered giving up. Maybe my father had been right all along. maybe I was reaching beyond my capabilities. As dawn broke, I made one last desperate call to a philanthropist who had expressed interest months earlier but had never committed. His assistant informed me that he was unavailable. He was at the children's hospital with his daughter who had suddenly fallen ill. Something clicked in my mind. I thanked the assistant and hung up, then immediately called Jordan. "I need you to set up a meeting with Alan Turner," I said without preamble. "The tech billionaire Claire people wait months to get 5 minutes with him. His daughter was just admitted to Metro Children's with what sounds like appendicitis. I'm going there now." "What, Claire, you can't just—" But I had already hung up. 2 hours later, I was in the pediatric ward of Metro Children's Hospital, not as Dr. Edwards the entrepreneur, but as Dr. Edwards, the physician offering a second opinion on Sophie Turner's case. It wasn't appendicitis as the initial doctors had thought, but a rare condition called Meckel's diverticulitis. It was a diagnosis I had seen only once before during my residency with Dr. Harrison, who had taught me the subtle differences in presentation. After explaining the condition to Alan Turner and his wife, recommending the appropriate specialist, and ensuring Sophie would receive the correct treatment, I prepared to leave. "Dr. Edwards," Turner called after me. "My assistant said you've been trying to reach me about a hospital project." "Yes," I admitted, "but that can wait. Your daughter's health is what matters now." He studied me carefully. "You didn't use my daughter's illness to get to me." "Of course not. I'm a doctor first, Mr. Turner. Always." "Come to my office tomorrow," he said. 9 a.m. Let's talk about your hospital." The next day, I presented our vision for Hope Memorial Hospital to Alan Turner. Unlike previous pitches focused on financial projections and market analyses, I spoke from the heart about what healthcare could and should be. "What happened with your daughter yesterday happens every day to families without your resources," I concluded. "They get misdiagnoses, inadequate care crushing bills. We can change that. We have to change that." Turner was silent for a long moment after I finished speaking. Then he picked up his phone. "Janet, bring in the contract papers for a major investment. And call the board. Tell them I'm committing $50 million to a healthcare project effective immediately." He turned back to me. "On one condition, Dr. Edwards. You name the pediatric wing after my daughter." With Turner's investment, everything changed. Construction resumed at full speed. We attracted top medical talent from across the country, and our innovative care model began to attract national attention. Feature articles in medical journals, interviews on healthcare podcasts, invitations to speak at conferences. Our hospital was becoming known before it even opened. 1 year after breaking ground, Hope Memorial Hospital was ready for its grand opening. The gleaming facility with its state-of-the-art technology and warm, welcoming design was everything Dr. Harrison and I had envisioned and more. As I stood at the podium during the opening ceremony, looking out at the crowd of supporters, staff, and community members, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride and gratitude. From the frightened, rejected daughter to the confident leader of a $100 million healthcare institution, my journey had been transformative. "Today we don't just open a building," I told the audience. "We open a new chapter in Healthcare One, where every patient receives the dignity, respect, and excellence they deserve." What I didn't say, what I held in my heart, was that we had proven my father wrong. I had returned, and I was far from empty-handed. The news spread quickly in the medical community. Hope Memorial Hospital wasn't just another healthcare facility. It was a new model, a disruption to the status quo. Our sliding-scale payment system, innovative community health programs, and integration of cutting-edge technology with compassionate care attracted patients from across the region. Within the first year, our patient satisfaction scores were the highest in the state. More importantly, our health outcomes, particularly for chronic conditions that traditionally affected lower-income communities, were exceptional. We were proving that quality healthcare could be both excellent and accessible. As our reputation grew, so did our financial success. What had started as a passion project fueled by Dr. Harrison's legacy and my determination had become a thriving institution valued at over $100 million. I had transitioned from practicing physician to Chief Medical Officer and CEO, leading a team of hundreds of healthcare professionals who shared our vision. My personal life had stabilized as well. The tiny apartment had been replaced by a comfortable condo near the hospital. I had developed close friendships with several of my colleagues, particularly Dr. Michaela Chen, our brilliant head of research, and Dr. James Washington, our compassionate chief of surgery. Jordan and I had grown closer through our shared mission, our professional partnership gradually evolving into something more personal. His belief in me had never wavered even during our darkest financial days, and his business acumen complemented my medical expertise perfectly. "We make a good team," he often said, his hand finding mine during late-night strategy sessions. I was cautious about opening my heart again after Marcus's betrayal, but Jordan's consistent support and integrity slowly broke down my defenses. When he finally asked me to dinner, not to discuss hospital business, just us, I surprised myself by saying yes without hesitation. Life was good. I had proven myself built something meaningful and found personal happiness I had never thought possible. The wounds inflicted by my father's rejection and Marcus's betrayal had healed into scars barely visible except in moments of deep reflection. And then came the email that threatened to reopen everything. "Dr. Edwards," it began formally, "I represent Cornerstone Pharmaceuticals and Medical Supplies. Our CEO would like to discuss a potential partnership with Hope Memorial Hospital. Please contact me to arrange a meeting at your earliest convenience." Cornerstone was a major player in the pharmaceutical industry, known for its extensive network of partnerships with hospitals and medical centers. A deal with them could provide valuable resources and expand our reach significantly. What the email didn't mention was that Cornerstone had recently acquired a chain of pharmacies, one owned by my father, Thomas Edwards. "It's a trap," Sophia warned when I showed her the email. "They've finally connected you to the hospital. Thomas is trying to get close enough to sabotage us from within." Part of me knew she was probably right. The timing was too convenient. After years of no contact, this sudden interest from my father's business sphere couldn't be coincidence. "But what if it's legitimate?" I countered. "We can't ignore a potential partnership of this magnitude just because of my personal history." Jordan took a more pragmatic approach. "Meet with them, but not as Claire Edwards, daughter of Thomas. Meet as Dr. Claire Edwards, CEO of Hope Memorial Hospital. Don't reveal your connection unless they do first." After much deliberation, I agreed to the meeting. It was scheduled for the following week in our hospital's boardroom. I prepared extensively reviewing Cornerstone's business model, their existing hospital partnerships, and their pharmaceutical pricing structures. If this was a legitimate business opportunity, I would be ready. If it was a trap, I would be ready for that too. The day of the meeting arrived. I dressed carefully in a conservative navy suit, my hair pulled back in a professional bun projecting the image of a confident healthcare executive rather than the frightened daughter my father had last seen. My assistant announced the arrival of the Cornerstone representatives, and I steeled myself as the boardroom door opened. The shock of seeing my father and brother walk in flanked by two Cornerstone executives was profound. Though I had intellectually prepared for this possibility, the emotional impact of facing them after so many years was overwhelming. Thomas had aged significantly. His once dark hair was now completely gray, deep lines etched around his mouth and eyes. Jack looked successful and polished in an expensive suit, but tense, his eyes darting between our father and me. If they were surprised to see me, they hid it well. Thomas extended his hand formally as if we were merely business acquaintances. "Dr. Edwards," he said, his voice betraying no emotion. "Thank you for meeting with us." I shook his hand briefly, maintaining my professional composure. "Mr. Edwards, please have a seat. I understand Cornerstone is interested in discussing a partnership." The meeting proceeded with a surreal formality. The Cornerstone executives presented their proposal, a supplier agreement that would make them our primary provider of pharmaceuticals and medical supplies. In return, they offered preferential pricing and inclusion in their network of affiliated hospitals. As they spoke, I studied my father and brother. Thomas remained impassive, occasionally nodding at key points in the presentation. Jack seemed increasingly uncomfortable avoiding direct eye contact with me. When the presentation concluded, I asked several pointed questions about pricing structures, exclusivity requirements, and impact on our existing community programs. The executives responded with practiced corporate answers, while Thomas watched me with an intensity that was unsettling. "Thank you for your proposal," I said finally. "We'll need time to review the details and discuss with our board. My assistant will contact you with our response within 2 weeks." As the meeting broke up, Thomas lingered behind while the others gathered their materials. When we were momentarily alone, he spoke quietly. "Your hospital has been quite successful, I understand. Quite the achievement for someone with no business experience." The familiar condescension in his tone sparked a flash of anger, but I controlled it. "We focus on patient care, not just profit margins. Different priorities." "Still idealistic," he said, shaking his head. "Some things never change. This partnership would be beneficial for both parties, Claire. I hope you'll consider it objectively." "I'll consider what's best for my hospital," I replied evenly. "Professional considerations only." A flicker of something, perhaps respect, perhaps just surprise, crossed his face. "As you should. Good day, Dr. Edwards." After they left, I sat alone in the boardroom, my carefully maintained composure crumbling. Seeing my father again, hearing his voice being addressed as Dr. Edwards, by the man who had once told me I would never succeed, all of it brought back a flood of emotions I thought I had processed and moved beyond. Sophia found me there, still staring at the proposal documents. "Are you okay?" Jordan told me who showed up. "They don't know," I said quietly. "Don't know what? That this is my hospital. They think I'm just the CEO hired to run it. They have no idea that I built this, that I own controlling interest." Sophia sat beside me. "Does it matter? Either way, you've proven yourself." I considered her question carefully. Yes, it matters. Because if they knew, they'd see this as an opportunity to take something from me, not as a legitimate business partnership. And I need to know which it is before we move forward. The next day, I asked Jordan to use his business contacts to discreetly investigate Cornerstone's recent activities and financial status. What he discovered confirmed my suspicions. "They're in trouble," he reported. "Their last 2 quarters have shown significant losses. The pharmacy chain they acquired from your father is underperforming, and they've lost several major hospital contracts. So they need this partnership more than we do," I concluded. "Much more. In fact, without new partnerships and revenue streams, they could face bankruptcy within a year." This revelation placed the proposal in an entirely new light. My father wasn't attempting to infiltrate my hospital as a power play. He was desperately seeking a lifeline for his failing business. I called an emergency meeting with our hospital board to discuss the Cornerstone proposal. After presenting the financial analysis Jordan had prepared, I shared my personal connection to Thomas Edwards. "I believe we should be aware of all factors that might influence this decision," I explained. "Thomas Edwards is my father, from whom I've been estranged for many years. This adds a personal dimension to what should be a purely business decision." The board members exchanged surprised glances, but the chairwoman, Dr. Barbara Winters, spoke for the group. "Thank you for your transparency, Dr. Edwards. Rest assured we'll evaluate this proposal on its merits alone. Your personal history with Mr. Edwards won't factor into our decision." After 2 hours of detailed discussion, the board reached a consensus. The Cornerstone proposal as presented was not in our hospital's best interests. However, they authorized me to negotiate a modified agreement that would better serve our needs while still providing Cornerstone with a valuable partnership. "And Dr. Edwards," Dr. Winters added as the meeting concluded, "the board has complete confidence in your ability to conduct these negotiations objectively and professionally." Her words meant more to me than she could know. Here in this room full of accomplished medical and business professionals, I was valued for my skills and judgment, not measured against impossible standards or found wanting because of my gender or career choices. I scheduled a follow-up meeting with the Cornerstone team for the following week. This time I would be negotiating from a position of strength, armed with knowledge about their financial vulnerability and the full backing of my board. The morning of the meeting, I received an unexpected call from Jack. "Claire," he said, his voice strained, "we need to talk before the meeting today. Can you meet me for coffee?" Curious and cautious, I agreed to meet him at a cafe near the hospital. Jack was already there when I arrived, nervously fidgeting with his coffee cup. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat down. "I know you have no reason to trust me." "Why did you want to meet Jack?" He took a deep breath. "Dad doesn't know I'm here. He doesn't know that Hope Memorial is your hospital. He doesn't even know that you're the actual owner, not just the CEO." I raised an eyebrow. "And you do?" "I did some research after our meeting. The Harrison Edwards Medical Foundation, the initial funding, the timing, it all fits. This is your creation, isn't it? Not just something you were hired to run." I neither confirmed nor denied, waiting to see where this conversation was heading. "Dad is desperate," Jack continued. "The pharmacy business has been failing for years. He refused to modernize, to adapt to changing markets. When Cornerstone acquired us, it was our only option to avoid bankruptcy. Now they're in trouble too, partly because of the liabilities they took on with our business." "Why are you telling me this?" Jack looked down at his coffee. "Because I'm tired of the lies, the manipulation. Dad plans to use this partnership to gradually take control of parts of your hospital's operations. He has no idea it's yours, but he sees it as a successful enterprise he can leverage to rebuild his own." The irony was almost too perfect. My father, who had dismissed my abilities and career choices, was now unwittingly seeking to benefit from my success. "And what do you want, Jack?" He met my eyes directly for the first time. "A clean start. I've enabled Dad's worst tendencies for too long, been complicit in his schemes. I'm not proud of who I've become." His honesty surprised me. The brother I remembered had always followed our father's lead without question. "The partnership," I asked. "Is it viable at all, or completely a ploy?" "The basic concept is sound," Jack admitted. "Cornerstone does have good products and competitive pricing, but the terms they've offered you are designed to give them increasing control over time." Armed with this information, I walked into the afternoon meeting with a clear strategy. Rather than rejecting the partnership outright, I presented a counterproposal, one that would give Cornerstone a valuable contract, but with strict limitations on their involvement in our operations. Thomas was visibly displeased as I outlined the modified terms. "This significantly reduces the scope of collaboration we envisioned," he objected. "It focuses the partnership on areas of mutual benefit," I corrected. "Hope Memorial maintains its operational independence while Cornerstone gains a prestigious hospital client. Given your company's current financial challenges, I would think this arrangement still offers considerable value." The flash of surprise in his eyes confirmed that he hadn't expected me to know about their financial situation. "We'll need to review these terms internally," one of the Cornerstone executives interjected, clearly trying to regain control of the negotiation. "Of course," I agreed. "We'll expect your response within 1 week. After that, we'll be exploring partnerships with other suppliers." As the meeting concluded, I noticed Jack watching me with what appeared to be respect, maybe even admiration. Thomas, however, seemed troubled, studying me with a puzzled expression, as if trying to reconcile the confident executive before him with the daughter he had dismissed. The final partnership agreement, signed 2 weeks later, was a compromise that served both organizations' interests while protecting my hospital's integrity and independence. It was a business transaction, nothing more, with no acknowledgement of the personal history between the key players. Or so I thought, until the day of the official signing ceremony, when Thomas asked to speak with me privately after the formal proceedings. "You've built something impressive here," he said, looking around the hospital lobby with its modern design and warm, welcoming atmosphere. "Very impressive." "Thank you," I replied simply. "I've been told this isn't just your workplace," he continued, his eyes now fixed on me. "This is your vision, your creation. You own this hospital." The moment I had both anticipated and dreaded had arrived. I straightened my shoulders, meeting his gaze directly. "Yes, Hope Memorial Hospital was founded through the Harrison Edwards Medical Foundation, which I established with my mentor, Dr. Harrison. I am the majority stakeholder and have been since its inception. Thomas absorbed this information slowly, his expression unreadable. $100 million institution, built by my daughter, who I said would never succeed without my help. Yes, I said again, offering nothing more. A long silence stretched between us, filled with decades of hurt disappointment and missed opportunities. I was wrong. He finally said the words clearly difficult for him. About you, about what you could achieve. It was as close to an apology as Thomas Edwards had likely ever given anyone. Part of me wanted to reject it, to throw back in his face all the years of criticism and control. But another part, a stronger, wiser part, recognized this moment for what it was, a chance to break the cycle of bitterness that had defined our relationship. Thank you for saying that. I responded, my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. It means something to hear it. Your mother would be proud, he added awkwardly. She always believed in you, even when Is she well? I asked, realizing I had no idea what had happened to my mother in all these years. She left me, Thomas admitted. About 5 years ago. Said she couldn't watch me destroy every relationship that mattered. He gave a bitter laugh. She was right, of course. Before I could respond, the door opened and Jordan appeared. Claire, the board members are waiting for the reception. He looked between us, sensing the tension. Everything okay? Yes, I assured him. Mr. Edwards was just leaving. Thomas nodded, extending his hand formally. Thank you for your consideration of our partnership, Dr. Edwards. Your hospital will benefit from Cornerstone's products, and we will certainly benefit from association with such a prestigious institution. I shook his hand, maintaining the professional facade we had both adopted. I believe it will be a productive relationship for both parties. As he turned to leave, he hesitated. Perhaps at some point we might discuss matters beyond business. It wasn't a plea for reconciliation, merely an acknowledgement that there was history between us, history that might someday be addressed. Perhaps, I allowed, making no promises. After he left, Jordan came to my side. That looked intense. Are you all right? I considered the question carefully. Was I all right? The father who had rejected me had just acknowledged my success, admitted he was wrong. The man whose approval I had once desperately sought had essentially conceded that I had exceeded even what he could have imagined for me. Yes, I said, surprised to find it was true. I really am. In that moment, I realized that while my father's recognition was validating, it wasn't necessary. I had built my life, my career, my hospital not to prove him wrong, but because it was my passion, my purpose. His approval, or lack thereof, no longer defined me. As Jordan and I walked to join the board members, he squeezed my hand. You know, I've never told you this, but the first time Sophia described you to me, she said, Claire doesn't just heal patients. She heals systems. She sees what's broken and finds a way to fix it. I smiled, thinking of all the broken things I had encountered: my relationship with my father, my heart after Marcus's betrayal, the healthcare system itself. Some breaks couldn't be fully repaired, leaving scars that would always be visible. Others could be transformed into something new, something better than what existed before. Hope Memorial Hospital was my transformation of a broken healthcare system. My life, with its hard-won wisdom and newfound peace, was the transformation of my personal brokenness. That's what doctors do, I told Jordan. We heal what we can. The sunlight streamed through the windows of my office, casting a warm glow over the photographs and awards that lined the walls. 5 years had passed since the signing of the Cornerstone Partnership. 5 years of growth challenges and unexpected developments. Hope Memorial Hospital had expanded beyond our initial campus, with 3 satellite clinics now serving different areas of the city. Our model of combining cutting-edge medical care with compassionate, accessible service had been recognized nationally, with healthcare systems across the country adopting elements of our approach. The partnership with Cornerstone had evolved into a surprisingly productive relationship. Under Jack's leadership, the company had gradually shifted toward more ethical business practices and patient-centered policies. Thomas had retired 2 years after our confrontation, handing full control to my brother, who had proven himself a more thoughtful and forward-thinking executive than I would have imagined possible. My personal healing journey had been more complex than the professional one. After our initial conversation at the signing ceremony, Thomas and I had cautiously established a minimal relationship. Not close, not warm, but civil. We met occasionally for brief lunches, careful to avoid the most painful topics from the past, while attempting to build something resembling a normal father-daughter relationship. "You remind me of my mother," he told me during one such lunch. "She was a doctor too before she gave it up to raise me. She had your same determination." It was the first time he had ever compared me to anyone in a positive light, and it opened a door to conversations about family history I had never heard before. My mother had reached out after learning about my hospital from a newspaper article. Our reunion had been tearful and healing. She had apologized repeatedly for not standing up to Thomas for not supporting me more openly. "I was too weak," she admitted, "too afraid of losing what little stability I had. I failed you. We both did the best we could with what we had." I assured her, finding forgiveness easier than I had expected. That's all anyone can do. Now she volunteered 3 days a week in our hospital's patient support services department, her gentle nature and empathetic heart making her perfect for comforting families during difficult times. As for Marcus, life had dealt him an ironic hand. The prestigious position in Switzerland that he had chosen over our relationship had dissolved when the clinic faced financial scandal. His career had floundered afterward, his reputation tarnished by association. Last I had heard, he was working at a small family practice in a rural community, struggling with professional burnout and substantial debt. When he reached out via email asking if there might be a position for him at Hope Memorial, I was surprised by my lack of anger or desire for revenge. "There's an opening at our community clinic," I told him during a brief professional phone call. "The pay is moderate, the hours long, but the work is meaningful." "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't deserve your help." "It's not about deserving," I replied. "It's about healing. For everyone." He took the position and proved to be a dedicated physician, especially skilled at connecting with our most vulnerable patients. We maintained a strictly professional relationship, the past acknowledged but not dwelled upon. Jordan and I had married 3 years ago in a small ceremony in the hospital's healing garden. Dr. Harrison's spirit felt present as we exchanged vows, surrounded by the colleagues who had become family and the few biological family members with whom I had reconciled. To healing what was broken and building what never existed before. Jordan had toasted at our reception. Now, as I sat at my desk reviewing plans for our newest initiative, a mobile healthcare unit to serve homeless populations, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. From the scared, rejected daughter to the confident leader of a healthcare institution valued at over $100 million, my path had been neither straight nor easy. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. It was Sophia now, our Chief Innovation Officer, holding a stack of mail. "Quarterly financials came in," she announced, dropping the envelope on my desk. "And this came for you personally." She handed me a small package with no return address. Inside was a velvet box containing a vintage stethoscope and a handwritten note. "This belonged to my mother. I found it while clearing out the attic. She would have wanted you to have it. Thomas." A simple gesture but meaningful. Not an erasing of the past, but an acknowledgement of a shared future, however limited. My phone buzzed with a reminder. In 15 minutes, I would be speaking to a group of medical students who had requested a tour of our facility. Young, idealistic faces, eager to change the world just as I had been. What would I tell them? That success is the best revenge. That proving others wrong is the greatest satisfaction? No. I would tell them that healing isn't just a clinical process. It happens in relationships, in systems, in our own hearts. That sometimes the people who hurt us most deeply are themselves operating from places of pain and limitation. That forgiveness isn't about excusing harm, but about freeing ourselves from the burden of bitterness. Most importantly, I would tell them that true success isn't measured by dollar amounts or prestigious titles, but by the lives we touch, the systems we improve, and the personal growth we achieve along the way. As I gathered my notes for the presentation, I glanced at the photograph on my desk, Jordan and I on our wedding day, surrounded by the hospital staff who had become my chosen family. My journey had begun with rejection and pain. It had led to a life richer and more fulfilling than I could have imagined. "Get out and never return empty-handed," my father had once shouted in anger. I hadn't returned empty-handed. I had returned with a $100 million hospital, with healed relationships, with hard-won wisdom, and with the knowledge that I was exactly where I was meant to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. What about you? Have you ever had someone underestimate your abilities or tell you that you couldn't achieve your dreams? How did you prove them wrong? Share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if it resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the greatest revenge isn't showing others they were wrong, but showing yourself that you were right all along. Thank you for listening, and may your own journey lead you to healing and success.